Hello, influential leaders and executives. This is your weekly live stream. My name's Melissa, and joining me is Kelsie-Ann. So just to give you a little background on who we are and what this is about. So I'm an executive coach and a management consultant. What that means is that I work with leaders such as yourself every day, day in, day out. I help leaders tackle the big leadership challenges they have on the table. So all of the things, and when we talk about leadership, I'm talking about leading people. So those challenges look like employee performance. It could be problematic behavior, could be getting your team on the same page. It could be increasing productivity, increasing performance. I deal with things such as creating hybrid agreements, new working models for your team that are designed specifically to your needs, your business needs and your team needs. I help leaders communicate. So I give them a communication process to be more effective and help them lead people, not only lead them, coach them to take on responsibility instead of being the person that has to chase after information and chase after people to get the work done. All right, so I set up leaders to be effective and teams to perform so that leaders can get great work done in collaboration with their team. So that's a little snapshot of what I do and maybe a little bit more details there so you get a better sense of what it looks like in my world. So the work that I do is very, very meaningful. It's very, very rich. It's also very challenging. I'm dealing with people. I'm dealing with wants. I'm dealing with objections. I'm dealing with disgruntled employees. I'm dealing with all of the things that we normally want to avoid. I'm going in head first. And I'm helping leaders and business owners deal with those issues. And usually that means coming out stronger together. So that's a little bit about me. And I know Kelsie-Ann is tagging people who wanted to be in the know about this live.
Definitely.
So I'm going to tell you about what this live stream is that happens every Tuesday, and then we'll circle back to Kelsie-Ann so she can introduce herself. So every Tuesday, I'm bringing to you what used to be called the EQ Leaders Pause, which is being re-entitled, right? The Leaders Impact Lab. So it's the same live stream. We've just re-entitled it to be more focused on what you're going to get out of taking that pause. So yes, we're taking a pause, but when we're taking a pause, it's not about stopping and breathing. It's not about stopping. It's about slowing down to think deeper, to take in new perspective on your challenge, the current leadership challenge that you're dealing with, and walking away with a strategy so that you can stop being busy and throwing spaghetti at the wall. And you can actually pick up a strategy that's going to get you the results that you want, the impact that you are seeking. All right, so this is what this live stream is about. So if you are tired of doing the same thing and getting the result that you don't want, this is about trying something new. This is about exploring. And every week I have either Kelsie-Ann joining me. That's, she's bringing in the perspective of the employee. I'm bringing in the perspective of the business owner. And I also have lots of great people joining me, other team coaches that are bringing their perspective and their work into the conversation. So we've got always leadership themes, subject that we're talking about. And today we are talking about being empathetic without being a doormat. So a couple of reasons that I'm talking about this today. One is we have an EQ Cafe coming up at the end of the week. I'll be giving more details on that at the end of this live stream so that you can join us. So this EQ Cafe is free. It's an opportunity for you. I'm only doing it once. So if you want in, stay tuned for the details, or we will be dropping the link below so that you can access the information. If you're part of this Facebook group, you probably saw it kicking around. There is also the information is in the featured section, correct? You can check it out there. And the second reason is empathy is such an important skill that we lack. And what we're seeing right now in the EQ trends, so through the research that 6 Seconds does, we see the trends year to year, and empathy is on its way down. So as stress is going up, especially through the pandemic, we are crashing. But it's been on a downward trajectory for a while. So it's not just since the pandemic. And yet empathy is a link to help us be more effective as leaders. We just don't understand it, and we don't know how to use it effectively. So I'm hoping to give you a little bit of an introduction on empathy, some new perspective around how empathy can actually help you as a leader get work done, right? Get an output, get things done. And you can do all of that without being a doormat. So Kelsie-Ann, tell me a little bit about you. And maybe you can tell us about your journey, because you've been working with me for 3 months. You've been participating in workshops and classes and courses with me. You've been along my side. You're also living it. You know, all of these things that I'm teaching and I'm helping leaders with, you're also living it as the employee. And empathy has been a subject that's come up. So tell me about you, and tell me about your journey in understanding and uncovering empathy.
So I've been with you for 3 months now. I'm your director of marketing and PR. I come from a background of freelance administration for the last 12 years. Working from home, so working remotely is not new to me. As for empathy, I feel like my understanding has gotten so much deeper and clearer, because my perceptions and my understanding was very skewed. And I realize now I was taking too much and putting it on my own shoulders and absorbing. I was a sponge. And I realized true empathy is not about any of that, but it's just listening and, you know, acknowledging it and whatnot. But the not owning it has been a big learning for me, and is still like a daily practice at times.
I agree with that in terms of, if I think back of my own journey in understanding empathy, it's kind of been that way too, where I was the savior, I was the hero, I was listening to people, but every little thing that you told me, that was just one added thing for me to take care of, right? So I really took on everything, and it was a lot of weight on my shoulders.
Definitely.
And we're so afraid to ask the questions that really open up the door to be empathetic, because we are afraid of what people might say. We're afraid of what that means in terms of our responsibility and what we're going to have to take on and what we're going to have to do. If I ask them what they want, I'm going to have to deliver. Right? That's such a big question. That's such an important question in the procedures that lead to change. What do you want? And yet we're so afraid to ask it as a leader, because they might tell us something that we can't deliver on, or is not within our power to deliver on, or if we deliver on it, it compromises us, and so, or we just don't have the time to deliver on it.
Mhm.
Right? Or it could be unrealistic. But we have to ask these questions if we really want to practice empathy. There's a lot of objections around empathy, about if I'm empathetic, I'm going to be seen as too kind. I'm going to be taken advantage of. People are going to think I'm a pushover. They're going to walk all over me. I'm going to be a doormat. And yet, if you think of the most influential and impactful leaders out there, think about, executives that have that presence. What do?
Listen more than they talk.
They listen more than they talk, and they ask really good questions. Empathy is really that bridge between good leaders and great leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And when you ask the right questions and you practice empathy and you really understand what's behind the behavior, what's really going on, then you can help direct that energy. And let me reframe that, because that could seem controlling. If you are angry and I'm listening to your anger and I'm understanding where the anger is coming from, I can lean into that anger and I can help you find a way through it.
See, I hear anger and I'm like, I get uncomfortable.
Look, a lot of people are angry in the workplace. This is,
I know.
And people won't say angry, they'll say frustrated.
Right.
Frustrated is a socially acceptable in the workplace.
Right. And
or
there's so
they'll
many
say,
times
I'm
when
annoyed.
Yes, when they're frustrated or annoyed, but they're venting to you, but they know, and you know, that you yourself do not have any control over that situation to make a change.
Yeah. So, but anger on the surface, we're going to see the behavior and we're going to say, well, this behavior can't happen. Now I have to go fix the behavior. But just underneath that behavior is the anger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can try to work with the components of the behavior, or you can look at that emotion that's driving the behavior. And you can say, tell me about that. And what you're going to uncover, and I'm, as I'm doing this, I'm in my head, I'm using the analogy of the iceberg. So now you're just below the surface. Okay, what's behind that anger? So now you're going deeper. And you may not be able to control this behavior, and you may not even be able to control or avoid this anger. But what you can do is the components that lies underneath all of it, that you can work with, because that's wants and that's perceptions. And that we can co-create something new that's going to change how we feel and change how we behave. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm talking about empathy is that door that gets you information. What's that emotional information that allows you to lead that person? But if you're stuck with, they have a bad behavior, I don't understand it, just do it, do the right thing. Mm-hmm. Right? It should, people should just know what to do. They should know it's not acceptable. That's not how it works. And you can say that all day long. It won't get you the result that you want. So that is the power of empathy. So we can kid ourselves, and this is not, part of my job. It wasn't part of my job description. No, it wasn't. But when we're talking about leadership, so if you're managing people, if you're leading people, leadership is about people. Mm. If you are responsible for a team of people to get the work done, the work is being done through people. The output is the productivity, it's the quality work, it's the tangible, but it's people that are the means. It's people that are doing the work, and you can't force anyone to do anything. And all these people, they're being driven by emotions every day in, day out, at every moment, because emotions are part of our biology. And when you can understand the system, how people work that get to that output that you're responsible for, because you have strategic goals, you have timelines, you have all of these things you need to meet, you have to understand people. And as I'm doing this, you're seeing that these things are in tension sometimes. You have this pole, you're like the person in the middle, and you have these big goals, these strategic goals, the vision, the mission, all of the things that are expected of you. Because at the end of the day, this business has to pay everyone. And then you have people with their own set of wants and needs. So there is something very complicated about leadership, which is one, people are complex, and you are constantly managing this tension.
Mm-hmm. I think too, many times, and the culture is, at work, you leave your emotions at the door, right? You check your emotions, that it's all business. And that was my belief, right? Don't get emotions involved. But I now realize emotions are involved every single day, every single moment.
When people say it's not personal, and I'm like, have we become robots? It's totally personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how can it not be?
We can't leave it out. It's part of our humanness.
Yeah.
And, I was reading a book about the future of work, and one thing that will never go out of style is emotional intelligence. It's one thing that will always be there. So long as people are at work, emotional intelligence will be required. And emotional intelligence cannot be replaced by machines. So if you are thinking about your own career arc and your path and your future and you're a leader, emotional intelligence is one of the skills that is crucial. It will make the difference between a good and a great leader. And it's the thing that will position you in those types of roles that you want to be in. And that will keep you employed no matter what happens in terms of AI and technology. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is, I think, necessary.
It is. And I think when you think back to, like, you know, the 1900s, things have changed a lot, right? And when it comes down to it. So yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about one thing, and then I'm going to give you an answer about how to handle this tension. Okay. So I'm going to give you some really gold nuggets just around the corner. But before I do that, this morning, Kelsie-Ann and I had a conversation. That was a hard conversation. Okay. So there was a need for empathy and a need to look at the business. So I'm not going to go into the details of that conversation, but I would like Kelsie-Ann to share a little bit about your experience this morning and how that felt to you, because that was a clear example of the need to balance these things at all times.
Mm-hmm. I've had difficult conversations with previous employers, and they didn't flow as well as that one. Our conversation this morning, I think knowing that our value being, like, we're humans first and leading with that has made a huge impact in multiple ways. And I guess you understanding that about me, that I'm a human and not a robot, and being willing to work with and being flexible, given, you know, the situation that sometimes life throws at us. As an employer, you still have to meet those strategic goals, but you also have to keep your employee motivated and productive and moving forward. So having the honest conversation that we had this morning allowed me to also get a clearer picture of what you see as the business owner, but also I think you got a little bit clearer picture of what I'm looking, from my perspective as an employee as well, without judgment, right? It is what it is. Either way, yeah, and I think we've figured out a path forward that is going to be in line with the business goals and he is an employee.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you about the components of that conversation. So take out your pen and paper right now. This is the time to take notes. All right. So one principle is all we can do is give information. Okay, so write this down. All I can do is give information. So I looked at where I was at. I looked all around me. I went deeper in my thoughts about what's Kelsie-Ann going through. What is this situation? What am I seeing? What other information do I need? Right? So I dealt with myself first. And then I asked, what does Kelsie-Ann need to know? So I didn't ask her at the time. I asked myself, what does she need? And I thought about that over the weekend. And I wrote down a few notes, two things. What are the two things that she needs to know? What's the most important thing? That was anchored in the business context. So remember, I talked about the employee and I talked about the business and that these things are in tension. So I said, what in this tension, what does she need to know on this side? So I brought forward my concerns. I brought forward those pieces of information. And I said, what do you think about that? Mm-hmm. How can we meet these goals? If we don't meet these goals, here's the consequence. And we had a discussion at that point about how we were going to balance the tension, and we co-created a path together. Mm-hmm. It was you and me working together.
It wasn't you telling me to just figure it out.
No.
Figure it out, get it done.
Figure it out, or do this thing, right? Telling you
just
what
do
to
it.
Or just
do it.
You blowing in the wind. And what's interesting is like, figure it out. But hint, hint, if you don't choose the right path, you're going to be in trouble. We set people up. We throw them in the deep end. We let them sink or swim. We give them enough rope to hang themselves. Or we just tell them what to do and then fire them when they don't do what they were supposed to and they were told to. And I'm saying these words that I'm choosing right now are the words that I hear in the workplace. These are the things that I hear from people. These are the words that are coming up, and it's common to say these things is not okay. And there is a better way, because these things are not working. When they're sinking or swimming, guess what? They're learning to survive and to keep themselves alive, and they're not trusting you. And if they sink, they're getting fired. And if you give them enough rope to hang themselves, guess what? They're not learning. They're just failing. And if you tell them what to do, they didn't understand. They didn't get it because they didn't have the information to put it together. Mm-hmm. So here's a few things not to do. So I hope you took note of those as well. So now that I'm explaining that piece to you, Kelsie-Ann, what's coming up? Does it seem familiar now that you go back and you replay the conversation?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, to know that it was us figuring it out together. It wasn't just like, okay, here's the problem, and you need to get it done. You need to deal with it, and like, let's get off this call and go do your work. It wasn't like that. It was like, how can we solve this problem together? It was a team effort, even though I'm your employee and you're my employer.
Does it feel like that though?
No, not at all.
No.
Just didn't like.
I feel like we're more team players than employer-employee, and that's on purpose, because that's how we're gonna collaborate and get work done. Because if the power play is I'm above you, can't work together.
No.
So why is empathy important? Why is empathy important? So if you're listening to this right now, one, say hello. I didn't prompt you to say hello. If you're watching on the replay, hashtag replay. But based on everything you heard, I'd like to know what your thoughts are on why empathy is important in the workplace. Okay, so this is your homework. This is your reflection. Why is empathy important? Because let me tell you, it has a place and it is important. And without it, we're just a whole bunch of people telling each other what to do, doing things we don't want to do, and being frustrated and angry about them.
And
no one's collaborating.
No,
for themselves.
No, and that's what I was going to say. My train of thought kind of disappeared on me earlier, but in like the early 1900s, and it was a different kind of world back then where people didn't talk about emotions, right? You didn't dig deep and look, so now we have this perspective, and you're not necessarily, I mean, everybody's fighting to survive, but in a different way. We're looking at that deeper understanding, and leaders back 100 years ago were leading very different teams than they're leading now, with different components to it. That emotional intelligence, I can see now how it's important.
We were surviving, and now we have the opportunity to thrive. And your team and your company has the opportunity to thrive. It's how we're setting it up. It's the norms that we're setting up that's deciding if we're fighting to survive or if we are thriving. What are the rules? What are the norms that we're setting up? That's setting up the culture, not setting up the climate. And that is determining the performance. That's determining the output. So a few months back inside the membership, we did an activity where we really looked at those conditions, and we took a really deep dive into how do we determine why our culture is the way that it is, and what would we need to tweak in order to see the changes. And then what changes do we want to see? Kind of directs what the tweaks that we're willing to look at. So these things are deeper, but let me tell you, it takes a lot of empathy to do an exercise like that, to really dive into your culture and to lead a change, so that it's small, like employee behavior, or it's big, like a big cultural change that you want to see in your organization. Common thread here is empathy is needed. If you're leading people, people are driven by emotions, and empathy is the gateway for you to have the emotional data to help lead people. Mic drop. That's the bottom line, So if you want to know more about empathy and leadership, here's what you need to do. You need to register to come to the EQ Cafe. It's completely free. There is no obligation to anything. The only commitment is that you come, participate, experience. It's an interactive workshop. It's an hour and a half on Friday at 11 a.m. Central. So here's the different time zones. Central, 11 a.m., 12 p.m. Eastern, or 1 p.m. Atlantic. You need to register. If you don't register, you're not going to get your Zoom link. You're not going to get your material. So please register right now by Thursday. You have until Thursday because I'm going to be sending out those materials Friday morning so that you are ready for Friday afternoon or late morning if you're in Central. And together, you are going to learn more about empathy, and you're going to go through activities that's going to help you not only know about emotional intelligence and empathy, but actually how to practice it. You're going to get some practice. You're going to build the skills. And if you already know about empathy, believe me, you're going to learn more because I keep peeling the layers. I keep peeling my onion. And Kelsie-Ann, you're going through that process too. This is an ongoing process of developing and maintaining your skills. This is not a one and done, not this type of professional development. So for those who come to EQ cafes, you can drop a little note about what you enjoy about them so that those who have not yet the pleasure of participating can know why they should come. And I hope to see everyone on Friday. Any last words, Kelsie-Ann? Maybe you can tell people about your experience. No, this is your first EQ cafe.
It is my first EQ cafe. So next Facebook Live, I can talk about it.
Talk about your students.
I'm looking forward to it and meeting Charity in person online.
Yeah. So Charity and I are facilitating it together. It's a wonderful opportunity. Like I said, it's totally interactive. It's immersive. It's a whole lot of fun. It's a whole lot of insight, and it's walking away with a completely different perspective. People who walk away from the EQ cafe feel energized, they're excited, and they have things to put in play. They're walking away with the strategies, the emotional intelligence strategies that they can apply immediately. Mm-hmm. All right. So if you want any of that, come join us and we will see you on Friday.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye, everyone.